Fast, yeah.
Okay, and whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, yeah, touch it in.
Whenever you're ready. It's live. I'm not gonna mess with this.
I know.
Yeah, and you got a bunch of people streaming.
Okay.
You want to take?
Anyway. Sure.
All right, let's
Yeah, these are a lot fancier than the ones I go to at 28.
This is the 28th.
I mean,
We're not. Okay, I'll check for you. Okay. Well, we can't get anyone to come. Once again. It's gotta be good. Okay. I can go check. I didn't even think we had this time.
No, I'm already about it.
Oh, yeah. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope it's not gonna be that
Okay.
I'm ready too.
Okay, let me get my notepad.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, and they actually work really well. Yeah. How are you?
I don't feel the chair. You have to throw it off.
So we don't have this last one? I just but I was you don't have that one?
So we need to stand here for the cameras and.
Yeah. Heather?
Sure, I'll.
Okay, 2 blue moons and what do you?
Forehand.
Forehand? I'll check for you. Principal is up to $9 or what is your, and the cheers?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Knew if I got otherwise. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Oh, my Lord. People have been taking a
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 28th Ward Regular Democratic Club meeting. We missed you all in August. We had to cancel our party just because we didn't feel like it was the smart thing to do, to be meeting here, everybody mingling and all that. And so it was a loss, and I was sad about that. My name is Ann Kidloss. I'm president of the club. Our vice president and committee man, Mike Ross, is sitting here. Deborah Lovelace, our secretary, is in the pretty pink top. Our alderwoman, Heather Navarro. Christina Bennett is our treasurer, but she is not here right now. We all welcome you here. Please keep your masks on unless you're actively eating and drinking. We're really trying to keep everyone safe. But I put in the notes that we can remove masks for speaking just because we're also doing a live stream and it gets a little muffled. So I appreciate your indulgence there. Don't forget to sign in, which is important for attendance, is important for voting later in endorsement elections. If you are online, please put your name in the chat. If you don't have the capacity to do that, just shoot us an email and let us know that you were watching. If you have questions on the chat, please put them in. We'll be paying attention and trying to respond to your questions as well. Heather Navarro will be leading our featured topic discussion on everything that's going on from here on Belmar on down to the Central West End. And I welcome her to the mic.
Thank you. That's quite a topic, everything. As a lawyer, I've learned never to say everything, always, never, all of those things. But I'm going to try to talk about as much as I can about what's going on. And we have a couple of other folks here in the room too. So, I hear from a lot of people, what's going on Del Mar? Is there anything going on Del Mar? And I know it's very important to a lot of us, no matter which neighborhood you're in, which side of Del Mar you're on. We talk about it a lot, and Del Mar's really kind of become shorthand for the racial and economic disparity in our city. But I think most of us know that the disparity does not start or end at Del Mar. And you can just look at numbers throughout our city to know that we struggle with poverty, with health disparity, educational disparities, all throughout the city. But when you look at a map, sometimes looking at Del Mar can kind of be a gut check. Just in terms of where are the hot spots, are we active on both sides? And we're all connected. So that's the other thing. I know oftentimes I'm in a lot of meetings and the focus is often on, what's going north and south of Del Mar, which again, it's important to be aware of. And it's, again, I think it's kind of a symbol too of the disparity in our city, but we are connected and there are a lot of things going on south of Del Mar that impact north of Del Mar, and we are all and most of us in this room probably live south of Del Mar just because of the boundary lines of the 28th Ward. But we're all impacted, we're all connected. And the reality is that Del Mar is a dividing line when it comes to neighborhood boundaries, taxing district boundaries, ward boundaries. And so as a result, a lot of the planning efforts that we see, a lot of the collaboration that we see, often treats Del Mar as the fringe, the edge of those sorts of things. And I've been in a lot of meetings where, Del Mar is definitely the backyard, or the like I said, the fringe, the edge, and the planning and the priorities often kind of on the other side. And so I think it is important to look at what is going on in Del Mar. We're really lucky. There are a lot of volunteer groups. There have been a lot of efforts in recent years to focus specifically on what's going on in Del Mar. How do we bridge the neighborhoods on both sides? And so that's what we wanted to talk about a little bit tonight, is what are some of those efforts? What are some of the things that are going on, and how can you involve? So I've got a list, and I keep adding to it, of the things that I do that touch on some of the projects along Del Mar. So I'm regularly in meetings on both sides of Del Mar, different neighborhood groups, and the 28th Ward, just so everybody remembers, it does, Skinker de Bolivar touches Del Mar. There's a little triangle of West End that also touches Del Mar, part of the loop. And then a little bit de Bolivar Place and the Central West End boundaries are just south of Del Mar, but we're all very much interrelated, and there are a lot of really great efforts going on. So I'm just gonna work kind of west to east, and I know there are other people in this room that have been involved in a lot of these efforts as well. And so if anybody wants to jump in, let me know. But we do have a couple of speakers here to talk about the East Loop SID, as well as what's going on with the Del Mar Collaborative. So I'm going to cue them in a little bit. But so first I will start with the East Loop SID. And this is an organization, Dave Masson will talk about this in a little bit, so I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder. But one of the things I want to touch on is there is a form-based code that is being worked on, and some of you may have heard about this. And it goes from essentially the Forest Park Metrolink station, north on de Bolivar, and then west on Del Mar up to the Metrolink station there, and then up to Skinker. And I don't know how many folks in here are familiar with form-based code, form-based district. Anybody? Yes, of course, over there. So we do have one in the 17th Ward, and it's another way of planning. So instead of just saying this is residential, this is commercial, there's a little bit more intentionality about it in terms of size of buildings. We're talking about streetscape standards. We're talking about uses of buildings. And so it gives neighbors a little bit more say about what's going on. And part of the reason that this conversation was recently reinvigorated is some of you may have remembered a proposal for a Ferris wheel where the Church's Chicken used to be at Skinker and Del Mar. And it sounds like a lot of fun. But we had some very good meetings about whether or not, the neighborhood thought a Ferris wheel was a good idea for that corner. And in those conversations realized we don't really have a code that says whether or not there could be a Ferris wheel here. And we might want to have a little bit more say in what happens on this corner. And so there have been some previous planning efforts, draft form-based code already done. And so there's an effort to pick that back up. So there are several partners in that. I think, the CIT is part of that, Washington University, Skinker de Bolivar, West End Neighbors. There's a whole bunch of folks coming together over there in the East Loop, and I'm sure I've missed a few. And de Bolivar Place, Special Business District is also involved with that effort as well. And so a bunch of stakeholders along that corridor have been meeting and looking at, what sort of development standards can we put in place so that when something is proposed, it's going to fit in with the neighborhood and the priorities of the neighborhood and what we want to see happen here. So that's been a pretty exciting effort. There are public meetings about that. I believe the Skinker de Bolivar website page has a link to more information. So if anybody wants more on that, but I think that's going to be really exciting. And it, like I said, it connects to those 2 Metrolink stations, which is something else that is really unique about this corridor as well. We have an opportunity to do a lot of transit-oriented development along Del Mar for sure. And I will also just bring up the trolley as well and give you an update on where that stands right now. So many of you may know the trolley applied for a CMAQ grant, which is a federal congestion mitigation air quality grant, and they should be hearing back pretty soon. And if that is awarded, the trolley will be able to run for free 4 days a week. And yes, I think that's great. We all would love to see that, wouldn't we? I've also been trying to get some local musicians to just sit on the back and play their guitars. I think that would be really great to drive up some usage on the trolley. They also are expecting an uptick in sales tax, like many of us are as we get through COVID, because there is a tax along the line that helps fund the trolley, and just like everybody else, those businesses were pretty hard hit. But they have been accruing funds. So once they get up and running, they're going to be able to put some staff back to work. And the goal is, to get going pretty soon by spring, but they'll know for sure, if they can get up and going this winter, that would be great. Winter's not necessarily a great time to get the trolley going with the weather, but if they can, they're looking to get that going as soon as possible. Continuing along, many of you, I don't know if you know, Jill definitely knows, the Regional Arts Commission has its home on Del Mar right now. That's a 3-4 story building. It's the tall one, 3-story, okay, the tall building just west of what is now K-Bop, right there on the south side of the street. Wonderful partner in RAC, and they are actually doing some surveys of neighborhoods, community stakeholders, just about how they can better be using their building and knowing that they're right there on Del Mar, and how is that significant to them? How can they better leverage that location to carry out their mission? So they often have exhibits. Obviously, COVID has kind of hit them hard too, but that space has often been used for many groups to meet, for art exhibits, events, all sorts of things. So that's right there in Del Mar as well. Another really great organization I've had a chance to get to know, Story Stitchers. They're actually on Skinker and Del Mar. A really great nonprofit doing a lot of work with youth, and they're focused on reducing gun violence through art and storytelling. They are doing podcasts. They have these really great dance battles. If you've never seen a dance battle, I highly encourage it. I feel like they've got one every other weekend. There's a cash prize. Just looking around this room, I'm guessing none of us are probably going to earn it, but we can definitely go and cheer them on. I showed up the first time and I thought, maybe I could do this, and then I watched and I was like, yeah, no, there's no chance. But really great organization, working with youth here in St. Louis. I already mentioned we've got 2 Metrolink stations. Both of those stations were part of a larger bi-state effort to do placemaking at Metrolink stations. So obviously the one at Forest Park, there's a bunch of development going on right there. So we're going to get those projects done and then start looking at some more permanent infrastructure and placemaking at that station. The Del Mar station, there's just tons of opportunity right there, especially as development continues east on Del Mar. When I was in college, I lived behind the Blockbuster in U City, if anybody remembers where that was. I'm trying to think what is there now, whatever. I think there's a
Soul Taco.
Soul Taco's in that building now? Okay, so behind where Soul Taco is now. And we did not walk farther east, maybe Westgate, maybe Eastgate, but that was WashU students. It was like, you don't go that far. You definitely don't get up to that Shell station that used to be there. So now I live at, near Pershing and De Pere. My kids walk by themselves up De Pere to get to the to get to the loop. I mean, if they're going to go to Wizard's Wagon or they're going to meet a friend at Baked Bear or whatever it is. So we have just seen tremendous progress, and it was a while ago that I was in, I mean, it's been a while. So it's probably been 15 years or so, but there just has been a lot of progress in that stretch. And you know, the trolley did hit some of those businesses hard with the construction. COVID hit those businesses hard, but we've got great musical venues over there, breaking records in terms of ticket sales to go see music. I was just there, I saw Squeeze. Again, indication of my age, if anybody knows Squeeze. So just a lot of great stuff going on down there. So moving along a little bit, I'm not going to get too much into Del Mar Divine. It's right there, though. It's in the 26th ward, so I don't get regular updates, but there's construction going on there. And you know, maybe if Dave or Brian have updates, I know that there are tenants looking to move in. So this is the big hospital project that's been under construction for a while, and they are moving. Del Mar Divine, yeah. Yeah, which is great to see. And again, I think what's exciting is that there are all these nodes along Del Mar that we're seeing that are being connected up. And so that's just making it more accessible. Again, I think a lot of folks, you know, who have thought, yeah, how do we bridge the Del Mar divide? How do I get what can I go do over there? And you know, it's hard to find a bank over there. I remember trying to go, I'm going to go to AutoZone. I'm going to use the AutoZone north of Del Mar, whatever it's going to be. But building up those amenities over there so that we are more connected, that more opportunity for people on both sides of Del Mar. And we are seeing that's what these nodes are doing, is helping to connect that. Moving along a little farther east, the Maker District, and I'm going to let Brian talk a little bit about that. So kind of in between Union and up to Skinker, there's a lot of great things going on there, a lot of great partners coming together. And what's great is I kind of get pulled in after the neighborhood and after the stakeholders have met and they've started doing their visioning. And that's what's really exciting, is to see the people from the neighborhoods saying, this is what we want, we're coming together, we're establishing our priorities, and there's just a lot of synergy over there right now. And then Fountain Park, which is actually, if you keep going north on Euclid, there's Fountain Parks over there, and there's some great development going on there, which again is going to help connect us. And I think, you know, we've got Forest Park, and then we have all these other really great neighborhood parks, north, east, south of Forest Park, and how we can connect people to those, whether it's through the greenways, whether it's bike lanes, whether it's commercial districts. And Kevin Bryan is a developer over there, and he's investing a lot in pulling neighborhood together so that we're going to see some exciting things happening there. And that connects right up to that Euclid Kings Highway corner over there as well. So we had a national night out in that parking lot a couple years ago, pre-COVID, and I thought that was a great way to bring neighbors from both sides of Del Mar together, start using our collective space together. Same thing, Lucier Park, I think, is another great opportunity to be bringing people from, you know, both neighborhoods on both sides of Del Mar together, using that shared space, start planning around it. And again, we've got to just get over these, whether it's a neighborhood boundary or a ward boundary, and just realize that, you know, these are community spaces, shared community spaces. And I think the sooner we start treating Del Mar like that, the sooner we'll be able to do that. And we're lucky we've got a couple people in the room here I'm going to turn it over to, who can talk a little bit more about specific efforts that their groups are working on, and how we're seeing real improvement in this shared space, this special shared space. So Dave is the principal at Design Alliance, he can tell you about that, and he's also the chair of the East Loop Community Improvement District, East Loop SID. So you want to come up and tell us about that, Dave?
Sure. Dave Maston is my name. I was talking to Ann earlier. You guys in the 28th ward, when I go to the 26th ward meetings, I mean, it's not, no leather seating, there's no beer, there's no wine, there's no food, it's different. But, so just to give you kind of a sense of what we're doing, so we call it the SID, it's Community Improvement District. And basically what it is just a taxing district for all practical purposes. So we just tax ourselves. And instead of letting the money go downtown to be used and collectively, it stays here in the neighborhood. And the great thing about that is then we're able to target where we're spending the money and how we're spending the money. So basically what we're working on right now, we've got security that we're working with, and I do call it beautification, but basically it's sort of streetscape stuff. So with that, and then I go back to what Heather was talking about earlier. Really, the SID is on the south side of Del Mar and the north side of Del Mar. So we are on, we play in both wards, actually. And, like we used to anyway. But what we want to try to accomplish is to make the streetscape. So we've got something that's pretty strong between Skinker and we get, let's say, to Rosedale. And then beyond that, we're kind of, we're sparse. And then we hit back to the 5800 block, then things pick up again. There's a lot more activity. The businesses are filled in. All the storefronts are filled. And so what we've done, I don't know if you've been by there at all, but we put up some lighting along the side. It's temporary fixed, but we got just the bare bulbs kind of strung along over the top of the sidewalk. So that gives it some ambiance. We're working on getting trees done, working with the city to do that. Apparently tree planting, did you know this? This is a trivia thing, that you start planting trees after November. And then by the time March rolls around, they don't want to be planting much anymore. So we talked to them, we got that all, it's 40 some odd trees that we have scheduled to do that. We have also this year, coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to get new trash containers, recycling, and we're going to take the old ones that we have now and turn them into planters, and we're going to disperse them around, and I think the Artworks folks are going to decorate them for us, I think is what we've got working. Let's see, what else? We had the mural that went on the east side of the trolley building. The one we were directly involved with is the one that's to the north side. This is on the north side over here, one farthest away from the street. We also have new parking lot signs. We have 90 spaces in the lot that's just to the east of the trolley where the old McDonald's was. And before that, I don't remember what it was, but that space that is available, so it really helps supplement what's on the south side of the street there in terms of business parking. So we've made that more identifiable. We just put something up temporarily. You know, temporary kind of becomes like 2 years, 3 years, but we got something that's a lot more graphic. So those have just gone up. And then let's see, what else have we got here? On the security side, we work with NSI Security, a private consulting firm. And they help us, we get regular reports from them. We have that at every one of our meetings, and it's extremely helpful. And another very helpful thing for us is to partner with WashU on their ambassador program. So without getting into the details for that, but those are folks that they don't have any legal authority to do anything, but they identify their presence, and then they, if they see something, then they report that right away. And that's been extremely helpful as well. So that happens during the school year for the university. But we've, actually, they have a grant for us for that. So we're thrilled to be partnering with them. So between the two, that's a real help. We still want to beef that up, but it's a real good start for us. A couple other things that, Rochelle Lequier, our executive director, she's great. And she gave me all my notes here so I can remember to say what's been happening. But there's been over $30 million. Most of that belongs to the Link building over here in the last couple of years that's opened up. So in 2020 and 2021, that opened up at CBS down below and office space up above. Actually, St. Louis Design Alliance, our firm, we took a building that was at the corner. It was the old Pete's Sure Save, if you can remember what that was like. And so we moved our offices. We used to be over at the Pear in Del Mar, and now we moved a little bit further east. So we're now at, so I went from about a 7 or 8 minute walk from my house on Clemens, north of Del Mar, to about a 3 or 4 minute walk. So it's a little bit closer for me, so I'm feeling good about the whole thing. But anyway, so there's that development, and then across the street, the dispensary is also opened up in the last few months. So those are 3, with the Link building being the biggest one, but all those just fill in. So it helps. And then the Magic Mini Golf is still in the works to try to fill in where the vacant property is there. And then here on the corner, I guess that's still in the works for the apartment building. I'm looking at Heather, and she's nodding yes. She doesn't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's a big deal. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know if it fits the form-based code as put together right now. And then this is just the list since April of 2020. So just about a year and a half ago, AAA Fish House has opened up. Back in Blacks, which is at the corner of Hamilton and Delmar. Black Beauty Supply, Chicken Out. House of Shibella, ITAP, and K-Bop, and Suede, and Wizard's Wagon. All have moved in within the SID boundaries. So that's between Skinker here and down to Laurel. So it's surprising the number of businesses. And while we're talking about businesses, I go to the next sheet. This might be a bit of a surprise to you too. We have 32 Black-owned businesses, including 4 not-for-profits. We have 23 Black women-owned businesses, which includes 3 not-for-profits. 26 women-owned businesses and 17 immigrant-owned businesses. Actually, St. Louis Design Alliance is one of those Black-owned businesses now. So Jeffrey McGee, who was about that tall when I first met him, when he was a preschooler, and he's grown up now and has now become our president. So we're excited about that. That just happened at the first of the year. So that's something that we're excited about. And we moved into our new headquarters, and so it's good to be able to do that. If you go up and down through there, I mean, it's not by design that we have been out recruiting or something. That's just kind of the way things have come together. So that's a good climate. We really have a good climate for startup businesses by and large, and that's great. So, we're not talking about a big chain coming in to do something, but it's all sort of mom and pops, and they've made a go of it. So we're excited about that. And, that's probably the gist of it. That gives you the basic idea of what we're trying to get accomplished. So we have a pretty good sized budget. Our budget's not quite $500,000 a year, and that's self-taxing. That's where all that's coming from. So some of these big, tall, like the Everly building and the Link building, our building and some of the others, all those kick in money to make it go. But so we're able then to spend the money on security. We're able to spend the money on beautification. Also, we're working on some some crosswalks at Giverville and then down at Laurel to get across Delmar. And then I think we're trying to get something going with some improving the sidewalks over in the 5800 block across from where the trolley's going to be coming in and out. Actually, I can watch that from my window. It'd be great. So if there are any questions along the way, I can be around, but I think that's the gist of our report.
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you. I wanted to just give a plug real quick too. Sure, come on up, Brian. Also, the Skinker Developer Community Council and the West End neighbors, they have been doing a lot of organizing in their respective neighborhoods, but recently have come together, and now there is a shared Delmar Commercial District Committee. And it's great to see those two neighbors coming together because, like I said before, each neighborhood can kind of focus on their own neighborhood, and then Delmar kind of gets in the middle there. And so they've been coming together, and so when a new business comes in, that committee, if they need a conditional use permit, if they need a liquor license, whatever it might be, they come and present to that neighborhood group. And it's a group of folks who are very engaged. They ask a lot of good questions. And then we actually see projects get better through that process. And the Link building is one of those. There's the Historic District Committee gets involved. And so if you live in those neighborhoods and want to get more involved, that's a really great way to get plugged in. And if you're interested in seeing something like that happen in your neighborhood, they're a great model, I think, for how citizens can really influence the development happening in their neighborhood. Yeah, Brett.
What is the Link building?
So the Link building is the one on the northwest corner of Skinker and Delmar. Yeah, just up here, the CVS. CVS is in the bottom, and then I can't remember how many square feet there are retail and
Yeah,
office.
about 30
ITAP just
I think it's
moved
about-
in,
yeah, they
also on the
just
bottom
moved in.
there.
About 30,000.
30,000 square feet, yeah, for office space. So, all right, next I want to bring up the Vice Chancellor of the WashU Medical Campus, Brian Phillips, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the Del Mar Collaborative. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you all for inviting me out to share some information about what we're working on and our work out in the community, and especially along the Del Mar corridor. I lead the entity called the WashU Med Center Redevelopment Corporation, which has been around for the past 4 decades and has historically worked in the 4-star Southeast and the Central West End neighborhood. We are a joint partnership between BJC Healthcare and Washington University focused on neighborhood stabilization activities in the neighborhoods that are surrounding our campuses. Over the past 3 years, my board has allowed my staff team and I to expand our service area to include the neighborhoods along the Del Mar corridor between Vanderbilt on the east and Skinker on the west. And we've spent that time getting to know the various stakeholders and players and actors in that area to see how we can be most useful and provide technical assistance and resources and things of that nature. I am very familiar with this community. I spent a good chunk of my childhood in the West End neighborhood. I started my elementary education at Cook Elementary School, which is now closed. And hopefully with the help of Dave and his great team, I will become a resident again of the West End neighborhood in about, you said 10 months? Let's hold him to that. So I said that I would
10 months, for sure.
10 months for sure. You heard that. So you can join me at the raid on his office if my house is not ready by then. But anyway, Heather and both Dave mentioned a lot of what's happening along the corridor, and there's a tremendous amount of energy and things of that nature. She really wanted me to talk about one of the initiatives that we've been involved in for, I guess, the past 2 years along the corridor called the Del Mar Collaborative. And what this really started off as, about 2018 and 2019, a group of us that were working in the various commercial districts, either along the Del Mar corridor or along the Euclid corridor, were brought together at the Regional Arts Commission for a presentation by Project for Public Spaces. They came into town to talk with us about different ways that you could activate and plan for public spaces using the power of 10. Basically, it came down to, if you're gonna plan any space, big or small, you're going to be successful if you can do at least 10 items in that, 10 action items. You can sit, you can play, you can run, you can jump, and you can do those things. But what was interesting about that very small group discussion is that while we were there, it was representatives from from my state. It was Rochelle from the East Loop Sid. It was Kate Hare from the Euclid Avenue Sid, and it was Brandon Sterling from Skinker to Bolivar, and things of that nature. And we got to sharing what we all were working on along the corridor. We were all shocked that, one, everybody didn't know one another, and two, everyone had no idea about all the activities that were up and down the corridor. And so and that's where the concept of the Del Mar Collaborative came. We didn't want it to be anything formal. We didn't want it to be an organization or a nonprofit, with rules and regulations and board officers and all those things. But what we really wanted to do was to create an informal table for community and economic development professionals to share information about what's happening along the corridor, to share best practices with one another, and to hopefully look for ways that we can potentially collaborate with one another in our outside work with our outside entities.
Thank you.
And when I was preparing for this, when Heather asked me to come and speak with you, I pulled out the very first meeting that we had. I think we had about 20 people there. We invited along with the original small group that was at the Regional Arts Commission. We reached out to other community and economic development professionals along the corridor. We reached out to a couple of the neighborhood leaders, and we came together just for an informational session. And we went through this little slide presentation to all get ourselves familiar with what was happening up and down the corridor, and we were all amazed. Along the corridor, there are number of initiatives, anchors, stakeholders that are doing fantastic work. So Heather mentioned some of them and Dave mentioned others. There's a lot of energy happening in the East Loop, what Michelle and what her and her group are doing. Maxine Clark's Del Mar Divine, which the first phase of that will open up in November, and the first commercial tenants will begin to come online there. And her vision for that to be a huge mega hub for nonprofits that can share best practices. Also, the subsequent phases will include affordable housing for some of our professionals in the city that find finding housing difficult, like teachers, new police officers, new city employees, and things of that nature, to bring energy there. It also included some of the other players. So Heather mentioned the Del Mar Makers District, and right around the time that we began working in the district is when we had a chance to meet with Jim McKelvey, who's one of our Board of Trustees members, and his local partner, Doug Auer. You might know them originally from the development of the Third Degree Glass Factory that's been there for, I guess, about 13 years. Well, Jim came up with a big idea. Instead of just having the Third Degree Glass Factory there, what if we created a world-class makers district that would attract makers and artisans from around the world to come and collaborate here in St. Louis along a corridor? And his case argument for that was that in so many of the other spaces around the country, it's so expensive for artists to live. And so they end up not having their own spaces to hone their craft. So they end up in a 600 square foot apartment in San Francisco, and they're trying to do their work there. And so what he set out to do was to create a district where they could collaborate, where they could live, and where they could share with the community. And he started off by doing a mass acquisition up and down the corridor. So when you drive on Del Mar between Union and Kings Highway, you might see a bunch of vacant lots. But what those are Jim McKelvey's holdings for future development that's coming in there. Some of the new additions and new anchors that he's already brought, the old tech shop space that was located in the Cortex district, all of that equipment was moved to a facility on Del Mar called Made. And it is a makerspace, it's a paid membership makerspace where artisans and bakers can pay a monthly fee, a daily fee, an hourly fee to come in and utilize that equipment to craft to work on their crafts. And as we worked with him, we wanted to make sure that he thought of this as also an opportunity to bring equity. The facility is located technically in the Academy Sherman Park neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that has experienced a lot of disinvestment over the years. And so what he agreed to do was to provide free scholarships to a number of neighborhood residents in that area. And he recently recruited Craft Alliance from the West Loop area to also locate a facility down there. But it just doesn't stop with just the maker spaces itself. The other things that he's been working on in that particular space, especially in the Academy Sherman Park neighborhood, is creating actual housing for artists. So if you just go one block north behind the main building, along I think the 5200 block or 5400 block, what is it? 5100 block of Enright, you will see a series of historic rehabs that are underway. Those are in rehab to be rented out to local makers as a part of the district. And also under the guise of equity, he did not want to create just a space for new people to come into an existing neighborhood and set off fears of gentrification and displacement. And so he's also working with his partners to develop a LIHTC project, a low-income housing project, tax credit project to rehab additional units for low-income residents so that they can have safe, affordable, decent housing in Sherman Park Academy. And further along the corridor, you have, I think Heather mentioned Kevin Bryan and Kingsway Development. Between Kings Highway and Taylor on Del Mar has been a long, desolate kind of, what happened here? You go 2 blocks south of it, you have $600,000 homes in the Central West End. You see the beginnings of the Euclid Avenue Street commercial district. You go 2 blocks north, you have this beautiful fountain park, which is one of our only oval parks in the city, but the property values are about $60,000 for the same type of housing. And so Kevin Bryant was awarded by the city of St. Louis Chapter 99 redevelopment rights for about 90% of that neighborhood, starting at Delmar, going all the way up to Page. And what that's allowing him to do is to help master plan that community for new development. And there is going to be some tremendous things happening, starting along that strip of Delmar. He's recently gotten approved for a city TIF for public infrastructure improvement. So you'll see a road diet coming soon. You'll see new street trees. You'll see new pedestrian accommodation, bike lanes that are separated and protected and things of that nature. But you'll also start to see the rehabilitation of some of the historic commercial structures along that corridor, along with that long vacant lot that has been vacant for at least 20 or 30 years. You'll see about 230 new market rate apartments rise on that facility. And so I've said all of that and not mentioned the collaborative itself. And so what the collaborative has ended up being, we meet quarterly. We evolve and we invite new members and stakeholders. But the idea behind it, Heather spent a lot of time talking about the issues of looking at Delmar as a hard border, as a place that separates us, as a place that divides us. We wanted to approach the idea of Delmar Boulevard as being the stitch that stitches these communities together. Our common living room, our common place that we can celebrate. If you look back at the history of the city of St. Louis, and when they laid out all of this area, including Skinker the Bolivar Place, West End, Academy Sherman Park, it was all called the West End. That's how we get the weird name of Central West End, like a neighborhood with two directions in it. Because it's a subset of a greater community. And the idea is to stitch that back together. And what we do in our quarterly meetings is that we choose a topic to talk about, how we can collaborate with things. So if it's public infrastructure, if it's safety and security, if it's economic development, we want to share best practices. We want to understand what people are doing up and down the corridor and use that table as a starting point to get the various members or the various participants to begin to collaborate with one another outside of the table, to go back into their community and use those relationships as a basis to begin to work up and down and do the real work. And we're starting to see some production out of that. The recent Delmar Main Street initiative that's about to be launched from the eastern border of the East Loop all the way to Kings Highway is a result of partners working together in the Makers District, the West End neighbors, coming together and saying, we want to do something about this commercial corridor to promote small businesses, to see the corridor develop in a fruitful way. And that started with a conversation at the Delmar Collaborative. And so we want to be informal. We don't want it to be a place where we want to be a place where we come together and those ideas and then go out into the community and see what we can actually do with our real organizations. So I guess that's pretty much it. And there's so much other stuff that's happening along the corridor. I'd be happy to answer any questions, any specific questions that you have.
Right. I saw on the news the post the other day, there was a picture of a plumber sitting on Delmar, that he was hired by the people that were making an amphitheater behind him on that track. What's that?
So go back to the.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So what Dan asked was, there was an article. Was it in the post? An article in the post about a plumber. A picture in the post with a plumber sitting right in front of a lot of Delmar where they're building an amphitheater in the section of the Delmar that's the Makers District. And if you go back to like kind of our original genesis of when we were called together, like how do you activate spaces? So Jim McKelvey owns a lot of vacant property right now, and it's not all going to develop all at once. And so the amphitheater is a way for the Makers District to begin to activate those spaces along that district to get people using it, even if it's a temporary basis. So they're doing things like building temporary parks and temporary activity centers and things of that nature.
Well, it's more of a natural amphitheater for a
Yeah.
park space, not
Yeah.
not a.
But on a temporary basis until you see the development, the physical development of those sites. Yes, ma'am.
When do you anticipate that those lots will be developed, the ones that McKelvey has purchased, that they're just vacant?
I think the market will have to demand that. Along that particular corridor, pre-development plans that are currently underway involve both Jim McKelvey and other private developers. So like for instance, the commercial plaza that's located at Union and Delmar that consists of both the historic buildings and the traditional strip mall. Half of that strip mall has been purchased by an outside developer, and there's plans underway to build onto that and build storefronts up to the street and rehabilitate the commercial spaces that sit back off the street to create more of a pedestrian experience. So that's an example, but I could give you an exact timeline. I think the market will dictate that. So you had a question?
Yeah, I was, if people are interested in kind of seeing more of this with their own eyes, isn't there something that they're doing on the third Fridays?
Oh, so the Makers District or Third Degree Glass Factory for the past, I think, 10 years, they've held what they called, I think, either a third or a first Friday event, which is it's a social networking event that happens that evening. It had historically been confined to Third Degree Glass Factory because that was the only thing there. But as the Maker District has evolved, people can just go between all of the different spaces, Craft Alliance, St. Louis Made, the Magic House, which sits above St. Louis Made, as a way to experience the district. One of the first questions that we asked when I look back at the presentation when we all gathered for the very first time was, what are things that we could all do to attract more people to Delmar, to come and utilize the street, experience the street, and come and appreciate the street. And so First Fridays is one of those existing things that was already happening. Yes, sir. Oh, yes.
Like this Friday or next Friday?
I don't want to be held to
It's
it.
usually third
I
Friday.
think so,
It's the
yeah.
third Friday.
Okay, so Magic House has a
Yeah.
place and they're all gonna be open, Craft Alliance.
Yes. Sir.
At the corner of Euclid and Delmar, you mentioned there might be apartments. Can you tell us more about what's going there and what the realistic timeline is? Because there have been a lot of things announced there that have never happened.
And can you repeat the area he's talking about?
So the question was, I mentioned that at the intersection of Euclid and Delmar on the southeast side of that southeast corner, that apartments are planned. And so the question was, what's the timeline on that? That project is well progressing, and we expect groundbreaking to happen either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year. It will be around 200 plus apartments, plus corner retail and commercial at the intersection of Euclid and Delmar. And the building will be positioned not to celebrate Euclid, but to position to purposely cross the Delmar divide and to stitch them together. Right across the street from there, Launch Code, which is another one of Jim McKelvey's initiatives to bring coding education to any free coding education to any people that can be qualified, is also rehabilitating the old state office building right across the street from there as their new headquarters. And so that project is well underway right now. What you'll see as a part of the TIF improvements is a road diet that will make it easier for pedestrians to cross. You'll see the main entrances to the buildings along Delmar. So there'll be some that people will just walk right off the sidewalk into their units, and then there'll be the big main entrances that are right there on Delmar. And that's all to promote the idea that Delmar is not a border. Delmar is our living room, and it's the place that we should be celebrating.
Oh, another question, sorry.
And at the same corner, there is a grocery store. I'm wondering how they're doing.
Unfortunately, we've heard that they're not doing as well and that they probably will close. And I think part of that is that they were probably a little bit ahead of the market. The Central West End already has 2 grocery stores, and there's a discount grocery store right across the street from it. So that's one place that's not a food desert. It's probably a little bit envious of folks, but we're pretty confident that that space will get backfilled.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Dave, for being here. And this is really not meant to be all-inclusive of everything that's going on in Del Mar. There's so many other great initiatives going on. These are just some of the ones that I'm aware of. And I hope that sometimes when it feels like the disparity is overwhelming in the city, when the vacancy is overwhelming, that we can be reminded that there are really hundreds of people who are giving of their time just working on this one stretch. I mean, not to mention all the other big issues that our city is facing, but it does give me tremendous hope to know that there are so many people giving of their time, trying to solve these big issues, coming together. I mean, whether it's architects, neighborhood leaders, folks from the med school, artists. I'm so glad that Brian mentioned Third Degree and what's going on over at MAID. If you have not been in there, it is so incredible. You can cut glass with water. They have like incredible machines in there. If you want to be a professional quilter, if you want to use a lathe, I mean, all sorts of things. If you need to make a Pinewood Derby car with your kid and you don't know where to start, they have the materials and the tools in there. And that's one of the things that I think is so great about it being also a community center for folks in the neighborhood. So I know COVID has really put a dent in some of these things, but there's so many people who have been continuing to work throughout this time on these efforts. So thank you so much. I think it really does give me a lot of hope for our city. And instead of talking about the Del Mar Divide, we talk about the Del Mar Stitch, the Del Mar Bridge. I don't know. I want to see T-shirts that say, Del Mar Love or something, because I think the hope really speaks to what we need throughout our entire city. So thank you again. I do want to mention, I think this is a good segue just to talk a little bit about ward reduction, because when we reduce the wards from 28 to 14, it does give us an opportunity to start stitching neighborhoods back together, bringing neighborhoods that have been working together kind of under the same roof. And we've seen how some of these planning efforts can be a little more complicated when you've got different wards, different aldermen with different plans, different priorities, and then the neighborhood group is trying to move forward with some goal, or you've got a couple of neighborhoods that are working together, but they've got different political forces, different budgets at work there. And this is why you see some streets are paved from one block to another and then not paved and then picked up again. There's really a lot of things in our city that I think that we'll be able to address more holistically when we do this, when we redraw the lines. And so we are going to have, technically under the law, about 9 to 10 weeks to get that done. The charter says December, Brian's over there laughing. December 31st is the deadline the charter gives us to draw 14 new wards. And we go back into session Friday. The legislation committee has been charged with coming up with the map, which will be passed as a board bill. I do sit on that committee. I've been talking with Alderman Joe Balmer. He's the chair of the committee. And what I just want to encourage all of you to do is think about how ward boundaries impact your neighborhood. And when you have the chance to advocate, to think about this from a neighborhood perspective. Our strength really comes from our neighborhood organizations. Whether it's development, whether it's addressing public safety, whether it's street design, whatever it is, the neighbors have incredible power and influence. And when you can advocate, to an older person who is able then to use their funds, use their resources to move that vision forward, that makes all the difference. And right now, the wards that we have, cut through a lot of different neighborhoods. And so I think we really need to advocate for a neighborhood-based map. And there will be public hearings when we get around to working on this board bill. And it would be great, I think, for all of us on the committee to hear from neighbors about how you see these new lines impacting you, impacting your ability to work together with your neighbors to advocate for what's best. So I think we're going to see a lot of different maps coming out. The data is out there. I've been learning GIS, and I know a lot of other people have been too. So I'm hoping that we will, be able to put some of these up online. You'll have a chance to see what these look like and start thinking about, which neighborhoods are you already collaborating with? Sneaker Developer and West End work together well. We Central West End, Developer Place, whatever it is. And also thinking about these lines. If we want to start putting Del Mar at the heart of planning efforts, at the heart of collaboration, well then what neighborhoods do we need to start looking at that need to be together under one roof when we do that planning? So I'm happy to answer more questions about that later. I'm going to make one more announcement before we turn it over to some of our other electeds who are in the room. But I do want to mention that I am having a fundraiser next week, and I have some invitations in the back there if you'd like to come. I do want to mention that there's not a union bug on it, even though I did get it printed at a union printer. They just forgot to put it on there. And my pro-labor self said, throw these out, you can't use these. My environmental self said, you can't waste paper. So it's a small batch for you all here tonight. So I hope you can join us. It's next Wednesday, 22nd. And I will be back up here, I think, at the end to take any other questions, and I'll stick around tonight too. But those are the main announcements I wanted to share with you all tonight before we turn it over to some of our other guests. So, okay.
Oh, we have one question.
Yes.
In the announcement of this meeting, it was mentioned that we were going to talk about your push to change Linville Boulevard. Are you going to?
Oh, I didn't know that was on the agenda tonight, but I'm happy to come back to that because I'm happy to answer questions about that. I do want to give the other electeds in the room a chance. But yeah, happy to talk about Lindell. I anticipated that would come up tonight. I do have a blog where I've written extensively about it as well. But yeah, we can come back to Lindell. I'll come back up here again and take any questions anybody has. All right, so we have Senator Carla May here with us tonight. Welcome. Come on down.
Well, it's not a lot going on. We're in interim. Well, let me take that back. It is a lot going on, even though we're in interim. But I will highlight something that may be of interest or important right now. We just had veto session. I got back about 10 o'clock last night. So they didn't vote to override any of the governors. They argued about $150,000. That was a line item veto the governor did. That failed, and they tried to, I think the House overrode it, but the Senate didn't override anything, so it didn't happen. Because everything happens in the Senate here. Can everybody hear me? Or you want me to hear me? Oh, I can breathe. Boy, I felt like fresh, cold air hit my face. And I have to take these off because I'm nearsighted. So let's just talk about some interim committees. I'm on 3 interim committees. One of them is elections. So the only thing the elections committee, we met once, and the only thing that was basically discussed was, voting. And so it was just a lot of outside individuals coming, talking about, just limiting people's ability to vote. That's how I see it. So putting barriers in place to voting. So those are conversations. They were talking about what was happening in other states in reference to putting different things, and Texas was one of them. So they're trying to implement some of those same voting laws in Missouri. And so that was that elections committee. Of course, I'm not in favor of any of that. I think we should remove restrictions in reference to voting. I think that we want everybody to vote.
Yeah.
And I always give an example to my colleagues about Utah. Utah is a state that's a Republican state. They have mail-in voting only, and they don't have restrictions for people to vote. Everybody can vote. They don't have, I think they don't have the, you can vote early. They got early voting. They have all of that. So I'm not sure why we're still trying to prevent people from voting instead of allowing every individual to cast their input in elections. So another committee that I have been placed on is called Greater St. Louis Regional Emerging Issues. Now this is an interesting committee. So the executive director of St. Charles County, Franklin County, and Jefferson County, they got together and they wanted to have a committee to discuss St. Louis. Now, mainly St. Louis City, because I called the executive director, Sam Page, and he was left out of it. So he found out about it through me, and so we met for 5 hours out at Lindenwood University in St. Charles. And I told them the next meeting has to be in St. Louis City, since they're talking about St. Louis City. But the gist of it is they want to do some sort of intervention. And what I got out of it is a total takeover. So, so that's my understanding. We had this 5-hour conversation. We had testimony. The mayor, Tashara Jones appeared. There was other individuals that testified at the committee hearing. One of the people that were testifying, I am so cold, you guys. That's why I'm shaking. I'm actually freezing. So one of the individuals testified at the committee, and he let it out that they had been meeting for 2 years about St. Louis City. And so a lot of it is they want to, they're talking about, what's happening in St. Louis. So they want to use the tagline crime, since they already have an agenda since they've been meeting for 2 years. And that's what angered me, because you've been meeting for 2 years, but you haven't included anybody from St. Louis to talk about. So the tagline is crime, and they want to use that as a prelude to whatever their intentions are. So some of the testimony talked about, taking over the court systems, joining the court systems together, St. Louis County. Some of them talked about, some of the suggestions were what the state did, way prior to, I think this was the Civil War, where the state of Missouri came in and took over St. Louis City Police Department a long time ago. And, they made points to say, that was they did that at that time because the tagline then was slavery, because St. Louis City was anti-slavery and the state was pro-slavery. So they came in. So I told them, so now the tagline is crime. So I think that St. Louis has a lot of things going on that's addressing the crime issue in several areas of my district where they have put in place crime de-escalation methods. Heather, you gotta help me with cure violence, especially in the Walnut Park area. Crime has reduced over there. They are really making progress in that area. We haven't had incidents in that area. So it's other measures. I know that the Urban League is working diligently in de-escalating a lot of those areas in crime. We do have other entities. Better Family Life is one of them as well, that has been working to reduce crime. So to say that, even talking to the police department and the police chief, a lot of this is individuals who know each other. So that's why it has to be the intentional focus effort that they're doing. So we'll be hearing more about the Greater St. Louis Regional Emerging Issues Committee. And the next time I get the date, because I want to make sure that you all are able to participate and come in the room, to talk about, what we're talking about. Because I think that, I don't know if we get, they want to say it's regional, but I told them, I said, listen, we had a lot of opportunities for us to be regional when we decided to upgrade the arts grounds and do the arts grounds. I remember all of you opted out of that tax. So you didn't want to be regional then. I told them when we were trying to keep the zoo tax, we fought that for years up there. All of you opted out of that. You didn't want to be regional then. So I don't understand why we're regional now. But, I told them I am open to any viable solution or suggestion that you have for the St. Louis region. One of them is they want seats on the tourism thing. I said, well, we're not on the tourism out there. But, so I think it's all about the money. They talked about the new stadium, the soccer stadium. They talked about the dome. So, we'll find out. They said, you got a question?
Well, I'm just curious, did they talk about perhaps allowing the local St. Louis city and county to have their own gun laws instead of state-imposed gun laws?
Oh, yeah, we talked, that's a good one. So yes, we mentioned that. We also, we definitely told them that they have been very unfair in the gun laws, and we could let them know that crime, when they passed those gun laws, have escalated. And we also advised them that they have dismantled the work that was together, the collaborative work between the federal agencies and the police department was dismantled with this last bill where they said that St. Louis City or Missouri police officers can't enforce any federal gun laws. So they have single-handedly dismantled the work, and you can't even prosecute gun crimes in this region. So those are some of the things we brought up. So the next time we have a meeting, I'm gonna need some help. Senator Roberts also sits on the committee, but right now he's on active duty, and I think he'll be back Friday. So I can't wait till he comes back. So he'll be a very good asset for me on that committee. So another interim committee they set up, and they put me on, and of course they love it. And they didn't ask my permission. I just want y'all to know they should throw me on these committees. So the next committee was Medicaid accountability and taxpayer protection. So the whole conversation for this committee has been about Planned Parenthood. And so they want to somehow the other services that Planned Parenthood offers, the medical services that they offer, the OBGYN services that they offer for people who can't afford services that get paid by Medicaid dollars, and so they want to strip that from Planned Parenthood. So that's what this whole session has been about. They're coming up with all of this comes from these different groups that are out-state groups, So those are conversations, and they're trying to figure out what legislation or what things they can put forth to further, eradicate Planned Parenthood. And the only one we have in the state is in the St. Louis region that's left. There's no other facility left. So that's basically what's happening right now. These committees have to give a report by the end of the year, by December 31st. So I would definitely keep you informed about what will be coming out of those committees. Other than that, we've been doing a lot of community meetings, and communities are coming together, doing great things all across the district. I'm really excited about the collaboration and the teamwork that communities have started to do. And I think we need it, and I think we are forced to be reckoned with, and I can't wait to see us grow from 300 back to about 1 million people. So, thank you. If anybody has questions. It was Jefferson County, Franklin County, and St. Charles County. 3 of them. We have an official state interim committee that the President Pro Tem put together, which is Dave Schatz. He lives in Franklin County. They put that committee together, but they have been meeting for 2 years prior to us. The chair of the committee, her husband is the county executive, I think, in one of those counties. I can't remember her name, Senator Elaine Gannon. Her husband is the county executive in one of those counties. So, like I said, they have been meeting 2 years. So we're kind of behind the curve. We don't have to catch up. So I'm, doing some research to find out what they can do and what they can't do legally in reference to our city.
Oh, just a comment. You said they didn't ask your permission before they put you on the committee, but it sounds like it's a good thing that you're there.
Oh yeah, they know me. So when it's getting ready to be a contentious committee, they pick me. And I got a whole lot of calls that said, they want decorum. I say I'm always professional. I don't understand. So I'm always professional, but at the same time, right is right, and I don't forget anything, and I have to continuously remind them of the contradictions that happen, because it's very important that, when we're in this legislative thing, it's like, I don't know, they throw out chasers. And so you'll be chasing chasers, and you have to step back and figure out what the real issue is. And so that's the case in this committee. We have to figure out what the real issue is, because if you've been meeting for 2 years, you already got an agenda. This is just a game. So, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Senator. Over here in the corner is our great 77th District legislator, Kimberly Ann Collins, always on the move. I think you were driving out to jail checks again today.
Prison pop-ups.
Prison pop-ups, excuse me, I forgot the.
Hello.
Hey.
I did. I just came back from, well, I went to several meetings before I got here, but I had to do a prison pop-up today. Hi, I'm Kimberly. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm Kimberly Ann Collins, 77 District State Rep. And I guess I'm gonna just kind of piggyback from what our senator said. I was over there writing stuff down. So we did just come out of veto session, and we made several efforts and attempts to override the governor's veto. So for example, House Bill 14, he vetoed a few line items, and we tried to restore $150,000 for refunds. He also, in House Bill 11, we tried to restore $2.1 million for pay increase for state children's division workers. Of course, that didn't pass in the Senate. And then $300,000 for a Lincoln County program that Representative Randy supported that amendment. And that's just a program that addresses crimes for children in Lincoln County, but that was also not overrid by the Senate. And then there was an effort to override the governor's veto of $1 million to expand the Missouri RX drug prescription program. We tried that, but it did not even pass in the House. Democrats, of course, voted for it, but Republicans didn't vote for it. And then there was a override veto for $26.4 million in federal funds for in-home care for the CDS program, Consumer Directed Services. And we tried that in the House to override it, but it didn't even pass out the House. Republicans voted it down, but there were some Republicans who did vote yes for it, so I was happy to see that. Set aside from that, there's not really much going on in the House. I haven't been appointed to any special interim committees, but some members from our corrections committee have been meeting this summer because I've been doing prison pop-ups at pretty much a lot of the correctional facilities across the state, just to learn about the living conditions, to talk to inmates about their perspectives about things that's going on, and to also hear from wardens about things that they have going on. Some correctional facilities do not have any reentry programs. For example, I went to Algoa today, and Algoa is a medium security institution, but their reentry programs are non-existent right now because of COVID. So that kind of hurts, because there are a lot of guys that are in Algoa that will be coming home, but they need those skill sets. There are a couple of facilities like JCC, Bonterre, Moberly has some reentry program services that they offer, but some things I'm able to address on site, and some things do need to take legislative reform and legislative approaches to addressing. Set aside from that, I put out in my weekly newsletter the 2 different urban agriculture grants. I know I heard somebody, I think the speaker said that the Central West End is not a food desert, of course, but there are still many people in the Central West End who have a lot of different food gardens and things out there to address food insecurity. And so there's 2 different agriculture grants. You have the food insecure matching grant, and then you have the urban agriculture matching grant. And those grants and applications are available all the way up to September the 30th. And then you can get up to $50,000 for the food insecure matching grant, and then you can get up to $10,000 for the urban agriculture match grant. I'm flipping both ways. Set aside from that, since there's not much going on in the House because we just got out of veto session, and of course I'm still being active, there are some different efforts on the ground in the community with community engagement. So Senator May and I have been really working together this summer to kind of tackle blackness Also, I'm working with the Missouri Probation and Parole Board. So I have a total of 54 guys that need service hours that are on probation that will be out next week with me. We're doing a Newstead Phase 1 project. And that Newstead Phase 1 project is to kind of draw some attention to different high spots of crime on Newstead that have drugs and prostitution. And so we're starting that effort next week. We have a bunch of city services that will be out, forestry, streets, refuge, to kind of knock down some of those different hiding places where people will go and, utilize drug activity. And we're utilizing our people on the probation and parole, individuals through probation and parole office that need those service hours. I also started this week with some individuals on the probation and parole office to start in the Baden neighborhood cutting grass, because grass is a lot of our issues in North City, St. Louis, set aside from abandoned buildings. And I say all that to say, we talked about crime. I heard a lot of people in the situation say, my car got broken into, and crime that just doesn't happen in North City, St. Louis. And so what we're doing is trying to really understand what the broken window theory is, and really trying to address living in the broken window theory. And that requires us to make our neighborhoods look good. So those are the things that I've been working on all summer, set aside from rescuing dogs and what else? Doing everything else under the sun. I have an expungement clinic coming up at Rankin, and that will be on October the 16th. Then I have a town hall, a district-wide town hall at Rankin, and that will be on October the 9th at 11 o'clock. And I'll put it in my newsletter. So I do send out weekly 77 district newsletters. I've been sending out those newsletters since I got elected into office. Every Friday they hit people's mailboxes. I hope y'all read them. But I chose Rankin because I wanted to start the conversation of closing that gap between the community and Rankin, because there's kind of a disconnect between Rankin and the community. A lot of people feel like Rankin's building, doing all this, and we don't have any input. So we're gonna do it at Rankin, and we're gonna talk about a lot of different issues. I'm gonna hear what people want me to start focusing on as far as legislation-wise, set aside from prison reform. So in the committees I sit on, agriculture policy, corrections, health and mental health policy, we got a chance to have a health and mental health policy committee hearing Tuesday, and we got a chance to meet the new director of health, Mr. Donald G. Horrifer. I hope I said it right. I just say Donald K. He's the new director of health appointed by the governor, and he is pretty cool. He does believe heavily in vaccinations, so that's really good. So I'm hoping to, so you can look him up on the state's health website, Department of Health and Human Services, and check him out, read his bio. So he did start, and I'm looking forward to working with him. Other than that, I have started a 77 district executive team, and that executive team consists of 2 individuals from North City, St. Louis. My chief of staff, Dr. Melissa Nash, who is the full service coordinator at Gateman Middle School, which I happen to serve as board member of Gateman Middle School, the only St. Louis public middle school with open enrollment in North City, St. Louis. And it consists of 1 individual from the Central West End, Miss Maggie McPherson, and then also Miss Maud Essence, who serves she lives in the 17th Ward, who serves on the 77th District Executive Team. And we will be meeting, moving forward, to have meetings about policy, things that we need to focus on for this upcoming legislative session just to get ready. And that is pretty much it. So everything will be in my 77 District Weekly newsletter. I am, let me see, it's September. So I'm 9 months in. This is my 9th month of being a legislator. And I think I'm doing okay. So, really? Okay, I'm doing phenomenal. Oh, and the last committee that we serve on together, but we haven't had a committee hearing, is the Joint Committee for Child Abuse and Neglect. But we haven't had a committee hearing yet. So I'm willing to take questions if anybody has questions for me. And then I saw you in the park. I did? Yeah. I went to Forest Park, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any effort to write legislation to restore voting rights to felons?
To felons? Mm-hmm. So there has been some talk about it. She asked, Ms. Deb asked, is there any efforts to restore voting rights for felons. We've been talking about it. I mean, there has been efforts. I think the thing is we have to really collaborate with Republicans, because from what I've noticed is even just from doing prison pop-ups, a lot of Republicans, you know, of course they don't go into prisons like that, but when I bring up just the idea of prison reform or criminal justice reform, their idea is totally different from what mine is. But being able to tell them my experiences of going into the prisons, my experiences of talking to deputy wardens and different inmates, and then just experiences about individuals who have been taken in the system, wrongfully taken in the system, and you know, have been wrongfully convicted, and about the conditions and everything, they get a sense of understanding. So I think there can be some more efforts this upcoming session, but we really have to sit down and find that common ground with Republicans off the floor, you know? And so we really have to work with Republicans on the other side of the aisle to do that. And there are some good-hearted Republicans. Every Republican is not bad, you know? And there are some Republicans who have said, hey, I want to start going into the prisons with you, you know? And so that's an effort right there within itself. So I think there can be some hope to restore voting rights for felons.
I think if you pay taxes, you're right there.
I believe so too. I also believe, I mean, Rasheen talks about this all the time, with the census. You know, he's been fighting that, Representative Rasheen Aldridge in the 78th district, that he believes that those individuals that are incarcerated in all these different rural areas, they should be counted in our area, especially if you're not serving a life without parole sentence. You know, so that's a fight that he's gonna be taking up again next session, that we're gonna, of course, be standing by and supporting. But I told him, let's try to get with the Republicans before session starts so that we can have that conversation, hopefully going on the floor and vote the same way. Because sometimes it throws us off. You know, sometimes we'll go in there, you know, file bills and not have conversations with Republicans about these different bills, and they already have a stance. And so we have to really try to change their stance ahead and get them to understand where we come from.
Yay. First of all, I think it's really awesome what you're doing with the prison pop-ups. I just wondered if you would tell us a little bit more. I'm just so curious about what your experience and how you thought of the idea and like how it's been going. That's just so important.
So I've always been interested in prison reform. So my dad was incarcerated. He passed away in 2007 at Bonne Terre Correctional Facility. So I'll give you my experience walking into Bonne Terre. I walk into Bonne Terre, I tell people who I am, and they allow you, like, you have access to the entire facility. They don't deny you a facility. But one of the things is the deputy wardens, when I popped up, they were not expecting that. So their face kind of went like, you know? And I'll tell you, when I walked into Bonne Terre and I walked into a guy's cell, because we can walk throughout the floor, we see the Puppies for Parole program and everything. And I walked into this man's cell. He just magically used to be my dad's cellmate. And he had a picture of me, my dad, my brother, and my sister. And I said, how do you know this man? He said, that's Yaya. That's my best friend. That's my cellmate. Because they call my dad Yaya in prison. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. But I said, do you know who that is? And he said, that's my cellmate. And I said, I heard you, but do you know who that is to me? And he said, who is it to you? I said, you see my last name? And he said, oh my God. And he put two and two together and he kept going. I said, this is Yaya's daughter. And so a lot of people in Bonne Terre knew my dad. And I'm saying that to say this is where my love for prison reform came from. So conditions on the inside. Some facilities have air, some facilities do not have air. For example, Moberly does not have air. They have some fans, and it's, to me, like when I went to visit Moberly, it just happened to be really hot that day. It was like over 100 degrees inside of one of the wings that I had visited. Well, I visited all of the wings, but just this one wing in particular, because you can't open the windows in Moberly. Like they can't open their windows in their cells. So they had fans, like big fans inside of their cell. And if they want to buy smaller fans, you have to buy that on Canteen. So conditions inside of Moberly were horrible. I caught inmates painting over mold. And I said, why y'all paint? They said, they just gave us a paintbrush. And this is just me being 100% transparent. Bugs, pests, that exists. There are some facilities that are rather cleaner, like JCC is a more cleaner facility. Algoa is a more cleaner facility. It just does not have air. Some inmates will talk to me and say, hey, I've been trying to reach out to a medical professional here, and they have not been reaching back out to me. They ignore me. And so these are the things that I can answer on site because the deputy warden is standing right here. So I'll look at the deputy warden and say, you hear this? And they hear it and they say, okay, well, they'll write down the name. And then when we get up to medical, I'll say, well, this is the name of the man who needed some attention. For example, over in Moberly, there was a man who needed a wheelchair. He had been utilizing a wheelchair for a very long time. Some way, somehow, his wheelchair got taken away. When I came, they had the opportunity to ask questions on site. So he said to the deputy warden, deputy warden Amanda Lake. He asked her, he said, I needed my wheelchair because his leg is amputated. And she said, well, have you gone through the proper procedures? And he said, yes, but I've been asking for my wheelchair for about 2 months now, and I have not gotten my wheelchair. And she said, well, I'll take a look at it and go through the proper procedures. This was one of those things where I went up to medical and said, this is an inmate right here that needs his wheelchair, and he didn't have his wheelchair. And do you know that they brought his wheelchair down when I was there? And in other instances, some of the men in Moberly only got ice 2 times a day. How, when there is no air? They need ice. They should be able to constantly get ice. And so some men said, well, I haven't had ice all day. I asked the CO officer, can you let them out to go get some ice? And he did. Since then, I've gotten a lot of calls from individuals at Moberly that say, yeah, we haven't had issues with getting ice. They allow us to get ice. And so sometimes it takes for elected officials to show up because my guess is they don't really want problems with the elected body. And maybe it scares them, elected officials showing up, especially when you show up unannounced, because I don't send emails and ask wardens, hey, what's your schedule look like on this day? I want to come to Moberly. I just pop up and show up because I believe I should be able to do that. And I want to see things raw and uncut. There's an incident over at Bonterra where COs sprayed a group of Muslims because they were praying. And to this day, we're still trying to investigate that and do a sunshine and get that videotape. To this day, those Muslims hadn't been bothered by COs, but I've been told from inmates through JPay, through individuals who run the prison reform group, that it used to be where COs were harassing individuals because of their religion. To this moment, since I've been in Bonterra, I haven't heard of anything yet. And I hear from individuals from Bonterra all the time. So some conditions are bad, some cultural environments are terrible, and some things can be addressed on site, but some things do take legislation. And it's hard to get a diverse crowd of individuals to work at some of these facilities because they are in deep rural areas. Some of them are. I hope that makes sense. I hope I went all over the place. I'm thinking about a lot.
No, you didn't want the incident with the Muslims. I had got a letter to that and I intervened as well. So that's why they stopped the harassment. The people were new, they didn't know, so they actually did some type of cultural training with those employees.
Yeah, that's a big, yeah.
So if it's still going on, let me know.
I will. So far right now it has stopped.
Right.
Yep. But I've noticed going into the prisons that wardens will sometimes get on their job and inmates, you're standing right there and inmates are asking questions. So sometimes like the wardens can't ignore, especially when a legislator is right there. And now I think that since they know the individuals are starting to, like myself and others are, interested in just popping up and seeing what's going on, and they don't know when I'm going to pop up, I'm not going to say they're trying to get themselves together, but they are on alert, it makes them on alert. So there's a lot of moving parts and different things going on in these correctional facilities. Yes, people committed crimes. Some people didn't commit crimes. Some people are actually innocent and have been taken away by false convictions or by a single eyewitness that actually didn't even see anything, And so we have to, like I said on Facebook, we have to put things in place for rehabilitation, not just punishment, because everybody's not serving life without some of these guys, whether they're serving 25 years, 30 years, 7 years, or whatever, they're going to be coming back out to society. And the recidivism rate for the state of Missouri is 43.6. So we have to bring that recidivism rate down and put these different, initiatives and programs and reforms and policies, towards these facilities so that we can see a change, especially in crime. Not saying that people repeat crimes when they come out, but some do.
I think it's great. That warms my heart to hear those stories and to see. I think it makes such a difference what you're doing, so that's great. I wondered, what did you say about the middle school? I just didn't hear part of that.
Oh, Yeaman Middle School is the only middle school furthest north and west of the Mississippi River with open enrollment in North City, St. Louis. So I sit on the Yeaman School Board. I love Yeaman so much not because I sit as a board member, not because my chief of staff is the full service coordinator, but they have different programs that are not just geared to those students at St. Louis, at Yeaman, but are geared to the entire community. Like they have a pantry, they have many different social service programs, as well as they also have a community garden that they have been working on because, of course, they understand that, you know, Yeaman Middle School sits in a food desert, as well as we have some of the highest, we have some of the highest obesity rates in North City, St. Louis, because all we have is convenience stores and liquor stores with no fresh produce. So I like the fact that Yeaman has that community garden, and then they have their students working in those community gardens, after school programs and everything. But that's all. I like Yeaman. I like all the schools in the district too. Even the charter schools kept, so no discrimination here.
Thank you. We have two of the hardest working women in Jeff City representing us. So thank you so much, Senator May and Representative Kimberly Ann Collins. I know it's about 9 o'clock, but I do want to address Lyndall because I know that's on people's minds. And then I'm happy to stick around as long as you all want. It's just so great to be out and seeing people in person, and so great to those of you who are joining us online too. Yes.
I'd just like to thank people for our vote for the community college district.
Okay.
Quickly, we're not going to spend $350 million on our 4 campuses. We're going to increase the number of nurses that we're training. We have 2,500 openings for nurses in the metro area. The community college trains 500 a year. We're going to go to 750 a year. And that's an essentially almost free 2 years of nursing school. So we've got a lot of money now to spend. Although people have said that that's not as much money as you think it is. We'll also be opening the childcare facility on Forest Park, and we're also planning to do one at Merrimack because a lot of students bring their kids to class. It's not really positive. So anyway, thank you all. The city of St. Louis turned out 70% for the district, and that really helped us because the folks in West County with the big houses, they did the math. They didn't like the math very much, but we in the city are, going to be the beneficiaries of a lot of improvements for Forest Park. It'll be completely different looking very soon. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's Pam Ron, so I represent King College. Thank you, Pam. So since Lyndall came up earlier from Mike, I'll start there. So if you haven't heard, there is in the works a new lane reconfiguration for the 2-mile stretch of Lyndall from Skinker to Kings Highway. And this touches on a big issue for just about almost every city street. Speeding, running red lights is a big problem throughout St. Louis. I know we've talked about it here. Every time I go to a neighborhood group, it is, if not the number one issue, the number 2 issue is just a lack of traffic enforcement in our city and how dangerous it is. And I get it. I've got 2 kids who are driving right now. It scares me when they leave the house. I don't know if I should encourage my daughter to bike to school or if she should get a ride with her brother who just started driving a couple years ago. All of them seem like dangerous options these days. So this is part of an overall, city initiative to be looking at how can we redesign our streets, because frankly, we have many more miles of pavement than we need for a city of 300,000 people. And so, we can't have police monitoring traffic on every single street throughout the city of St. Louis. But what we can do is design our streets in such a way to reduce speeding and to help alleviate some of those problems. And this is something that's being done all around the city. You may have just heard on the news, Southampton just went on a road diet, and so it's down to 1 lane in both directions, kind of near the Buter Branch Library in South. Lyda, when she was alderwoman, she reduced Oakland on the other side of the park there. That's down to 1 lane in each direction with bike lanes. Arsenal, Magnolia alongside Tower Grove Park. I mean, there are many, many examples. And Lindell being the street, it's a 2-mile stretch alongside the city's largest park. It was part of a study 4 years ago now, the Great Streets Project, that looked at how people get around inside the park and how they access the park. And 25 miles an hour is an appropriate speed for a street alongside a park of that size that so many people access by walking, by biking. However, it is a very wide street. It's very difficult to go 25 miles an hour on Lindell because it is so wide open. The houses are set far back and you've got a wide open park on the other side. And so people, some people just naturally, not trying to be very responsible drivers, very easily go 40, 45 miles an hour on that street. And then there are a whole bunch of irresponsible drivers out there as well who are going 60, 70 miles an hour. And we've done we've used the speed radar to look at traffic speeds along Lindell. And it's right for a lane reduction like we've done on many other streets throughout the city. So that concept came up during the Great Streets study over the last few years. So that was just a concept. So that's just one thing I think it's important for folks to know. The Great Streets study also put out there a roundabout at the Lindell Union Bridge. Some of you may have seen that. It's an idea. We are going to start kind of vetting that idea, planning that bridge later this year. The city's hiring a designer because that bridge is ready to be rebuilt. There are 2 bridges there. So that's gonna start happening. But we did have designers just look at the lane reconfiguration on Lindell and what could be done there, what could fit there. And it's right for 1 lane in each direction with bike lanes on either side. I don't know why people, Sure, yeah, Parker.
Bike path right there in the park, why bike lanes also?
Sure, so Parker's got a great question. And I just want to say, I'm not gonna be able, I can stick around as long as you want. I know people have lots of questions. I'm happy to stay and answer them. I've been answering them. The Post-Dispatch, the Business Journal, everybody wants to know about bike lanes on Lindell. I ended up doing a blog piece on my website to try and answer these because I get it. And a lot of these are questions I've been asking. I will just tell you that the community engagement process for this project was a little usurped because the press got involved. So we've been talking to the immediate neighbors on Lindell and then working our way out. I talked to the Skinker Bolivar Neighborhood Development Committee. And we also had a whole bunch of open houses planned and COVID cut all of those short. So just all of that is to say, I understand there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of people who use Lindell. And I'll take as much time as I can, but you can also go to my website, heathernavarro.com. The city, if you go to the city's website and just type in Lindell on the search bar, Lindell Streetscape, I've asked the city to put together a website with all of the background data, links to the studies, links to the proposed plan, so you can see all of that. So even if you don't get all of your questions answered tonight, there are other places to go as well. So
there is a public comment page on the Lindell page.
Yes, so the city's website has a comment page, so you can go on there and put your comments in there if you'd like.
Okay.
So let me answer Parker's question first.
I thought you were.
No, so Parker's question is about, there's a bike lane on Lindell already as part of the park. Why do we need another one? Great question. So one, the bike lane in Lindell is a recreational path. It is not a direct shot from Skinker to Kings Highway, from Skinker to the Metro Link, Skinker to a bunch of different places. And so these bike lanes are meant to be really for commuter cyclists. And if your commuter cyclists go much faster than the recreational biker, and it is actually very dangerous for commuter cyclists on the bike path in Forest Park. I've commuted back and forth to work before, and I'm not anywhere near a professional cyclist, but the number of people who are walking their dogs on the bike path with a leash going across, or the little kids who are toddling back and forth, the strollers, that's great, that's what the path is for. But if you are traveling at a much higher speed down that bike path, it's dangerous. And then also, if you're trying to get to work in the Central West End, you're trying to catch a train at the Metro Link stop, you want to get there as fast as you can, just like you would in a car. And I can just tell you, when I'm on my commute and I'm running late and I gotta go, take the nice windy path around Union and then go back up over here, West Pine, like that's nice and all, but it's not the quickest, it's not a commuter route for cyclists. So the Go St. Louis, was it Go St. Louis? Maybe it's TrailNet. One of them, years ago, looked at the city streets and said, where are the best places for bike routes? And Lindell was identified as one of those. So this is something that people have talked about for a while. Lindell is due to be repaved. It's very expensive to repave a 2-mile stretch. It's got a chip seal on it that is not in great condition. So that's gonna happen at some point anyway. So my approach is, if there's gonna be money spent on this, let's, address the issues that we know we have here, which are speeding is a big one, people zigzagging around cars because there's not enough traffic to slow you down. And there's not enough cars, like tonight there were a lot of cars parked on Lindell because of Twilight Thursday. But generally there's not enough people parked there to slow people down. And so the idea is with the bike lanes and the other thing, if you haven't seen the plan yet, in the parking lane, we're proposing some pinned on concrete medians. And they have these now, you can go check them out on Arsenal and Magnolia alongside Tower Grove Park. They're actually kind of a reddish color. And there's a variety of things you can do to make them look aesthetically pleasing. But the idea is they're physical barriers so people cannot zigzag around when nobody's parked there. So that's kind of the general overall scope. We are looking at the stretch from Union to Kings Highway. The traffic flow there is a little bit different, and people don't tend to park over there. So, and trying to address some of the safety issues with neighbors coming in and out of Lake there. So, there is an option there to kind of have a third lane that we're looking at there as well. So Jill asked about the cost. So, so the estimate so far is around $500,000 for the 2-mile stretch. And 300,000 of that is what I have set aside from work capital because that's what it would cost to pave it anyway. So that's been set aside. For anybody who's curious, I mean, Union has been repaved, McPherson's been repaved. Every time the city streets department says, hey, this is what you think you should pave next, I defer to the traffic experts, the road experts. And I know the city streets are in horrible shape. I mean, you go travel to another city and you feel it, literally. Like we noticed when we travel to other cities, we're like, gosh, it's such a nice smooth ride. Our city streets need a lot of help. And the work capital funding that we have is completely insufficient to take care of what we need to do with city streets. And that's why the capital money, the federal stimulus funds that we're getting for infrastructure, I think are going to be incredibly important. And I do have a couple of appointees on the Citizen Advisory Committee to the Capital Committee about how those funds are going to be spent. And we need so much more money to take care of our streets. But this is just money that is there for paving streets, taking care of it's called capital, but it's really basic maintenance sort of thing. So the other 200,000 would still have to be raised, from other funding partners.
Because I know, I'm kind of interested in speed humps.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep saying, well, I don't have any money.
Yeah, that is not why you don't have speed humps. It's not about money. The money is completely allocated for speed humps.
And I don't understand.
I can give you the update on speed humps. So the city now has a whole new policy and we've had to re-enter all of our requests for speed humps. But it's not a funding issue. They're not very expensive at all.
You can buy them online.
Yeah, well, I don't encourage you to do it on your own because I don't know if the city will cover the liability, but this is not taking away from, the senior developer. We've got a traffic study. I've asked them to move ahead looking at the Waterman, Rosedale intersection. There are other, and my thought with Board Capital right now is going to spend this down before there is no more 28th Ward. So I'm not withholding money from other projects at this point. This is funding that's been set aside for paving Lindell, and I'm trying to make the best of it and leverage it to get more funds to do something better. Yes, Lillian.
I'm not trying to get off subject. I know, you said something about water reduction earlier. Because I had got an email about the Prop R campaign, the Reform St. Louis, about them turning in 38,000 signatures. So does that change how the legislature is, I don't know if you all have been having conversations about it, does that change things about how you all are even thinking about drawing a line and will that go into it? How do you know 38,000 signatures are accepted?
Yeah, so this question's about Prop R and redistricting. Can I just see if there are any more questions about Lindell before I go back to that? Is that okay? Because I want to give time to that. Yes, Ian.
I just want to say, Joe, excellent. Facebook thinks that Lindell, your plans for Lindell is a great idea, but on my other brain, I say Kings Highway, Kings Highway.
Okay, yes, great question. So, yes, anybody who says Lindell is not the worst street for speeding, I agree. And so there are efforts happen. So what we can do on a road diet is appropriate on Lindell. A road diet on Skinker, a road diet on Kings Highway is a completely different matter because the volumes are way too high. So I have allocated ward funding for a plan on Kings Highway, and actually working with Alderman Todd too. So from West Pine-ish to MLK, looking at what we can do to reduce speeds there. We can't do speed humps. We're not going to do a lane reduction. But there are things at the intersections we can do. I'm going to say the word bump out, and people get all sorts of different ideas in their heads. But essentially, extending we have more of a pedestrian refuge. People can still park, but they won't be able to drive through the parking lane at the intersection and go around cars parked at red lights. So that is in the works. There's a contract already out. There's a group. I'm supposed to in October have a report on that, and then it'll just be a matter of getting those things funded, which I hope we can do next year. So that's Kings Highway. Skinker, I know, is another big problem. I've been talking to the streets department. I've talked to TrailNet as well about what we can be doing there, and that was also included in that Great Streets project. And some of the ideas there, WashU, you've probably seen, they've redone the intersection at Skinker and Lindell, as well as at Forsyth and Skinker. So they have already invested, they followed up on a few of the ideas from the Great Streets project. There's still more that we can do. And I'm looking forward to working with a group of neighbors on Skinker too to start advocating for more there. So, this road diet on Lindell is not going to solve all of our problems, and it's not going to solve the worst of our problems. It's the opportunity that's in front of us right now. And so I think now is the time to embrace it and do that. But we absolutely, Kings Highway, I get it, and we've got to get that moving too. Yes, Rick.
I find Kings Highway so horrifying. Like, I go across it, probably 3 to 5 times a week, and there's not a time that I don't go across it that somebody just doesn't run a red light. They literally have their stop and they just go right across it. I've nearly been hit so many times, but I've never seen anybody enforcing police enforcement like that. Because it's like, I don't go, it's maybe 3 or 5 times a week, but it's almost 100% of the time that's
So I do have good news for that. So for those watching, Britt was just sharing her horror at Kings Highway and how often people run red lights. Completely agree with you. I did talk to Dr. Isom, our public safety director, last week about this. Every time I have a chance to talk to the captains, the chief, I bring up this issue because I think a lot of us feel like if you can just run through red lights and nobody cares, what else can you get away with in this city? So
somebody could easily just do that. There's always people.
Yeah. So one thing that they are doing, the traffic division, they're going to have 3 speed radar cars per patrol district, just monitoring traffic, issuing tickets. It's speed radar that moves forward and backwards, and while the car is moving. So they're going to base that. They're going to they'll be patrolling the areas where we've got, the highest accident rates, the most dangerous areas, and Kings Highway will definitely be on that list. So I'm great. So we should see, more people getting pulled over, more tickets for sure. So I think that's going to be good. The thing to keep in mind is that Skinker in the 28th Ward, west or south of Forest Park Parkway is in the 2nd Patrol District, and that is shared with a lot of South City neighborhoods. And I call both the 2nd and the 5th and ask them for traffic enforcement whenever they've got free time. They're supposed to come sit and pull people over, and they have been doing that on Skinker a little bit more often. However, the rest of the ward is in the 5th district, and the 5th district goes north and covers a whole bunch of areas north where they are responding to a whole bunch of other crimes and calls for service. And so we don't, it's harder to find police officers who have time to come sit on Kings Highway and ticket because they are splitting their time with all those other neighborhoods to the north. So that's just something for us to keep in mind. But that does mean that's 2 different pools of police cars to be out doing traffic enforcement. So I'm grateful that they're going to be doing that. They're also looking into what else they can be doing to better deploy police resources. So for example, if there is an accident, police officers, sometimes 2, come out, they take a report, they spend hours taking reports, filing reports, and those are things that you don't really have to be, the accident's already happened. You're not preventing a threat or a danger at that point. So they're looking at, whether it's social workers who can interact with victims on a different level, to be able to file those reports, and police officers can be doing other things, responding to more violent issues or preventing crime, and preventing accidents, that sort of thing.
Talking about putting cameras back up, that would do it.
So question about the red light cameras. So my understanding, the issue with the red light cameras is that the technology has to be good enough that you can identify the driver of the vehicle in order for it to be used in court. So, as soon as we get that up, yeah, that works.
Or you charge the driver for letting his vehicle do that. It's not against the driver, it's not points, but you pay a big fine for allowing your vehicle to be used in that manner.
I would say bring that up with the lawyers. The lawyers of the city just keep telling me that it's unconstitutional, we
They
can't.
don't talk to me anymore, but they talk to you.
No, bring it up with the Court of Appeals, Dan, which has a bigger stick. That's the obstacle.
Well, you can't charge them.
They have better cameras.
You charge the
they're in
owner
different
for a
states,
parking
for one,
violation.
The
probably.
Court of Appeals says this is different than parking. It's been litigated.
Yeah. So Mike, yes.
Well, I have a lot of questions and concerns, and I could answer everything you said, but we'll be here till 10 o'clock. But I was kind of blindsided by this newspaper article about a month ago that said you were pushing this, and then I got on the city's website that said this Lindell Boulevard safety improvements on the city website said that at your request, the Board of Public Service hired this pre-core firm for just under $120,000 to do a study. And so, of course, they're going to say, yeah, it'll be safer. But I've known traffic engineers for years, and I talked to them about accidents and everything else. I can give you the names that I knew of the city engineers, and there was never a problem on Lindell Boulevard, ever. And I worked for the city for 28 years. I defended lawsuits for 28 years. I defended these lawsuits. And even now, I drive Lindell, and Lindell is a safe street to drive on. I know people go through red lights and, they practically drag racing on Skinker, but it's not the way on Lindell. Talked about, and then you talk about other road diets. There's no comparison between Lindell Boulevard, where mansions on one side, beautiful park on another, and you already have left turn lanes at Bolivar and Union and Kings Highway. There's no comparison between Lindell and Southampton, south of Chippewa to Gravois. There's no comparison with South Grand, where all those businesses are, south of Arsenal. Are you talking apples and oranges? Okay. I can ask you 20 questions, but I'll just say this. I was blindsided, and I attend all these meetings, and I'm pretty well informed, and you've never talked about this before. It's never been in your emails before, and you wouldn't have talked about it tonight, but for the fact that I asked you to. You talk about community involvement. I would like to have my voice heard with you and others, but I don't know, you quietly, something got you going to push this and to get the Board of Public Service to hire this CBB company rather than our own traffic engineers. But what can I do to speak up and have a voice?
So thank you, Mike. I don't know if I'll be able to summarize that for everybody, but I think kind of questioning the project in general, I can say, and the ability for the community to be engaged in it. The reason why it hasn't really come up at meetings before is a streets project. There are a lot of streets projects that don't necessarily come up at the ward meetings. It's been talked about in terms of, I know 4 years ago I was talking about the Great Streets Project. There was community engagement and input on that. And the lane diet, the lane reconfiguration was brought up then. At that point, it was just a concept plan. And so the city does not have the capacity to do the planning for that. So when I said, well, what do we do next? They said, well, we would hire we'd hire traffic engineers to do this. The city doesn't do that on their own. So, and so we had to vet it. And so I went to them and said, is this even possible? We need to study the speeds. We need to look at use of the park, all of those things, and tell me, is this even possible on this street? And they looked at the vehicles per day, and it falls in the range of what other road diets are. So I'm not going to. I'm not a traffic engineer. I didn't sign up for this job to be a traffic engineer. It's just the way our city is set up with board capital and how street improvements get done. So I very much defer to the traffic experts on this, and then very much value public engagement, community input, because you all live on these streets every day. And so that's how that got done. They started with the community input from the Great Streets Project. We started with the neighbors directly on Lindell. They were the first ones to see the project because they live on the street. Same thing the streets department would do with any other project. They would go first to the neighbors who live on that street. We were still tweaking the plan when the news got a hold of it, but I mean, it's never been a secret that's been out there. The plan was then to have community open houses, so for anybody who wanted to come, and also to do meetings with the surrounding neighborhoods. And so, like I said, I started that a little bit with Skinker de Bolivar, with their neighborhood development committee, talked to their board about it. We were going to do an open house, with the Central West End Schlafly Library. You can't do that anymore. So the public engagement hasn't been as robust as we would like. There's a comment page up there now, though. So we are still seeking comments. But these street projects, they're really not I'm not a traffic engineer. So when streets need to get paved, the traffic engineers say, hey, this is what needs to be done. This is what you could do. I share with them. I get comments that people are speeding on Lindell. We've had tragedies at the Union-Lindell Bridge. The Union-Lindell Bridge is going to get rebuilt. We know that. That is coming, and chances are it's going to be a one-lane bridge. So that means the streets coming into it have to be one lane. Union's already gone down to one lane in both directions. So this project very much fits with the longer-term planning of what we need to do there. The comment page is still up, so feel free to weigh in. I know there are strong opinions on either side. Again, I'm leaning very heavily on the folks who have studied this. This lane reconfiguration, I would say that Arsenal and Magnolia alongside Tower Grove Park are similar. You've got houses on one side, you've got Park on the other, and you've got Kings Highway and Grand on either end. And that street works great. People naturally go about 30 miles an hour because that's what the traffic flow is, and you've got people going back and forth to the park. So I think we do have other examples we can look to, and this works. It's been well received. Nothing that we're doing is going to be completely permanent. I mean, it's going to be paint and pinned on concrete barriers. So if anybody's worried that this is going to be a total disaster, it can go back to the way it was. But right now, based on the numbers that I've seen, the complaints that I hear, a lot of people use Lindell to access Forest Park, all these neighborhoods to the north. And Skinker is horrible to cross. Kings Highway is horrible to cross. Lindell is let's not turn Lindell into a 50, 60 mile an hour speedway. And let's try to keep that a safe way for people to cross and for drivers as well. There have been hundreds of calls for service, people rear-ending each other. I'm not going to say all of those are life-threatening injuries. But we do have a lot of calls for service because people easily travel too fast. So, if you want to stick around afterwards and talk, but I think all that data is up there. And everything that I've heard from, the traffic engineers, I'm not just talking about the ones who were hired for this project. Again, they were hired to vet this. Will this work here? What would work? What could we do to reduce speeds? That's what they were charged with. How do we reduce speeds on Lindell? And again, you can go to the website and look at the proposed plan and leave your comments. And happy to, I'm sure I didn't address everything, Mike, but happy to stick around as well. And I will jump to Kimberly Ann's question about Prop R, unless anybody has any legal comments. So Kimberly Ann asked about a reform coalition effort, and I think we've talked about this here a little bit too. Folks were gathering signatures to put on the ballot a measure that would change our charter so that redistricting would be done by a citizen-led commission instead of through the Board of Aldermen as an ordinance right now. As far as I know, they haven't collected the signatures for it. And so we'll see, maybe they're shooting for next spring. My charge as an alderman is to follow the charter, which says we have to draw the lines by the end of this year. So I haven't gotten too involved with that particular coalition because whether it happens or not, I still need to help draw lines by the end of this year. That reform measure has like 4 or 5 different provisions, not just the citizen advisory or citizen commission. So there's a lot more to get into there. My concern, though, I'll just share with you all, with a randomly selected citizen commission, is that drawing lines for a map it involves map making, a lot of math. You need folks who have some experience with those sorts of things. And the way the commission is written, anybody who's had any experience in government or any experience in campaigns, any prior experience with this sort of thing is pretty much conflicted out. And so, and if it's randomly selected, I don't know how many people are in the city of St. Louis with this very specific piece of knowledge about how to draw maps. So I would really love to say, sorry, I'm getting perched here. We should have an independent demographer. If you were going to hire an independent demographer, figure out how you're going to do that. That person's going to draw the lines. Great. But a randomly selected group of people who live in the city of St. Louis who happen to be interested in map making and know the ins and outs of all of this, I think just gets a little trickier. And who gets on that commission? It's randomly selected, but the people who are going to apply probably are going to have political agendas. I just think there's a lot there to figure out and talk through. I agree that we could maybe take this. We should take this out of the hands of the aldermen. But I think that I think we should have a conversation about how to do it. But in the meantime, we have a deadline, a hard deadline of December 31st. So my approach is that we need to have some public hearings. We need to get some mapping tools out there for the public to be able to take a look at this and weigh in and comment and get the best maps we can get, so we can get to work. I'm sure there will be litigation, but I'm hopeful that if we have a map that passes legal muster and also has credibility from the community, then then we can move forward. Anything else? Recycling. I think we're going to have new recycling bins at the Crossroads parking lot on the west side of the street, west side of Bolivar. So if you want to be bringing your recycling somewhere, we do have it's not technically the 24th, but it's a lot closer than all the other ones. So it'll probably be the end of the year before we get recycling back up and going again. So feel free to bring them to the drop-off locations. All right, go home, everybody. Good night. That's okay. I'm ready.